welcome back to another episode of Chai Time. I hope you all are doing amazing, and I'm your host Alina. I'm here today with Adnan. Adnan, welcome to Chai Time. We are really happy that you're joining us today. And how has your week been so far?
The week has been great. Made a lot of progress. Had some minor health issue, but all in all, a great week. How is your
That's
week?
good. My week was fine. I had flu, so that was something that was not so fine. But overall, it's good that I'm recovering. So, without further ado, let's just dive right into today's episode. So, in Chai Time, guys, we have really interesting conversations that are related to tech and AI. And today, we're back with another really interesting topic, which is drum roll, please. Autonomous vehicles. So, we will be exploring the ethical dilemmas and the liabilities that are attached to them as well. So, my first question to you is, how does an autonomous vehicle work for a person who doesn't know much about the technicalities behind it? Could you please define that for us as well? And could you also touch a bit upon that? How can they navigate ethical dilemmas if they can?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a long coming dream, right? Autonomous vehicle. When I was little, and that was a long time ago, very long time ago. In a magazine, I read this description of a vehicle that is moving, and people are sitting in there, and they're having food, and there is no driver, right? And it completely captured my imagination. At that point, there was no image, there's nothing, right? It was literally one of those very old and but the idea is fascinating, right? That you're going somewhere, but while going you can do whatever you want without having to keep your concentration on the road. And definitely since then things have changed quite a bit. That is before the internet, before the computers. So definitely it was just somebody's very vivid imagination. um, we've seen quite a lot of influx of money going into that. um, Generally this generation of autonomous vehicle, so that particular version that I was talking about was actually more akin to a train rather than a vehicle that can go anywhere. And we have that vision has changed significantly, right? Because current generation of autonomous vehicle that we see, or as they're envisioned to work, are that works on sensors, right? They have an array of sensors, and we're seeing a lot more sensors in our cars as well these days, where when you're reversing you see a camera. I have a slightly more sophisticated version of it, which not only shows the back view, but it actually shows an overhead view, cameras around it. So it's almost like you're in a helicopter looking at the car from atop. And I've seen even more sophisticated version of it that we may see in vehicles going forward, right? The more high-end cars have lane detection, which again comes down to sensors. Now, what are sensors? Sensor in most cases are cameras. They are not always the same camera that we use on our phones. They may be different kind of cameras, such as a camera that only detects how um, far something is, not what it looks like, right? Because most of the camera that we're familiar with detect what in the visual appearance. But let's say you just want to know how far the obstacle that is coming, what's the distance, right? Because so that's one kind of camera. Then there are more sophisticated camera that you can put, and I've seen some of them here and there. And again, it's still a research that what more sensors can we put in, right? You can have sonic sensors, which is basically just like it works in the submarine, where you throw a ultrasound wave of sound, and whatever bounce back, uh, the shape of the object generally, right, and the distance it has, right, kind of a radar view. The one very big usage is the laser cameras, or laser, what we call lidars, which is basically there's a thing like a radar that is rotating constantly, and it's um, showering the surrounding with a almost invisible laser. And based on that laser, it detects, kind of makes a shape of the world around it, right? A 3D shape, right? So that's another kind of camera. Now, you can put all these cameras on any vehicle, but the autonomous usage is that once these cameras are there, you take all the data. So traditionally, you would just look at it, right? But you take all the data, you convert it into um, binary format, and then you feed it into algorithms, right? And those algorithms then come up with predictions, and there can be different kind of predictions for different purposes, right? So a simple prediction will be, will the direction that if you keep on going in that direction at the same speed that you're going in, will there be a collision? And that's an existing sensor that we see in most of the car that came in the last 2 to 3 years. All of them have collision sensors, which is almost like now a default feature in new cars. So if you're going and somebody breaks in front of you, and if you were to go to the same speed you would to collide, it would start quickly beeping. And a more sophisticated version is which automatically engages the brake to stop the car. Right. That's like a very basic, I would say, very initial concept of autonomy of some kind, right? Now a more sophisticated version is where not only it detects that particular part, but using the same cameras or lidar, the data again goes into the algorithm, but the algorithm is now predicting how far are you from the left lane and how far are you from the right lane markers, right? And the second you try to cross the lane, another part kick in, which uses using the sensor on the side, which side you're going in, tries to predict that were you to collide on a vehicle that is coming from the back or a vehicle that is currently going in that lane. Again, another algorithm. So you can think of it as like um, hundreds of different algorithms
Yeah.
which may be actively predicting something or may start predicting if, and previous algorithm says that, oh, this needs to kick in, right, based on the action that you're taking. So it's like a prediction queue sort of a thing, right? So whatever you're trying to do is trying to make sure um, that you don't run into a kind of behavior that shouldn't happen, right? Based on ordinary circumstances. Now,
Okay.
that is, I'm still talking about where the driver is engaged, right? Now, you can actually take the driver out of the loop, right?
Okay.
And just make it a queue of algorithms, which is predicting things that you may want to happen or not happen, right? So let's just imagine there's an algorithm that you feed it an address and it comes up with a list of roads that is supposed to go and the entrance and the exit is supposed to take, right? And
Okay.
then based on those, it starts feeding into the algorithm that we just talked about. Like, is it about to collide? Is it about to, is there a turn that is coming? So I need to slow down and so on and on, right? So that's the basic concept of how autonomous vehicle work. So, and I'll stop here. So, give you some time to process this and come up with your next question.
Yes. So the next question I asked that would they be able to navigate ethical dilemmas, as in certain situations would they be able to make really end time sort of critical situation sort of decisions?
It's an interesting question, and again, when this entire autonomous, like this generation of autonomous vehicle hype started, that was the primary concern or primary discussion that non-technical people were very concerned about. Like, what happens? Let's say that, and especially like the trolley dilemma, right? Which, if you're not familiar with that, is basically just that. Uh, you're going you're standing near the track of a train and you have a lever that can switch the train from one track to the other, but you see that on one track there are like four people, and they can't move out of the way in time and the train is oncoming, right? But if you switch the lever, the train will go to the other track where there's only one person, and where will you pull the lever or not? And it's a philosophical and ethical um, trivia that, oh, what are you supposed to do, right? And the same thing applies to the vehicle as well. Let's say, in order to protect a child trying to cross the road, um, what should the vehicle do, right? And it can't safely brake. What should it do? Should it go and hit the curb? Should it make some dangerous maneuvers which may put the driver's life in danger, or whatever, right? So these are the questions that do arise quite a bit often. I think there's no simple answer to these things. What we do know for certain is um, road vehicles are not a new thing, right? Road vehicle has been on the roads for more than 1.5 century at this point. And since very initial humble start, they have grown to basically everybody has traveled in them. Everybody knows how they work, in at least in the most thing, right? So, which incidentally also means that we know most of the problems and most of the concerns that we do run into on a normal basis, and even a lot of corner cases, right? So it's not nothing new for car companies to um, have enough data to have a list of all the things that can happen, including the ethical dilemmas that we talked about. Now, the good thing about that is that once you have this data, designing an algorithm um, that can tackle all the cases as well as and the best human driver can is not um, impossible to do. I wouldn't say it's not hard to do. It is very hard to do, but it is not impossible to do. Which means that if we do it once and put it on a chip, let's say, and put it on production, then you can be confident that every single car that has that chip is gonna make the best decisions based on that person driver's profile. And of course, if we can update that, we can always keep on improving, right? So all of us can have a more safer driving experience or more safer travel experience than we currently do, right? Will they somehow magically solve the ethical dilemmas? No. Will they make mistakes? Yes. Will those are those mistakes better or worse than um, we that we are likely to make, as not the under not ideal circumstances? They will be better, definitely, right? Definitely, there'll be drivers that will be exceptional, and they may be even better than that chip. But for most cases, um, and things will improve. And the reason for that is, of course, that even the best drivers um, can't handle the mistakes made by other drivers, right? So they can be the best driver ever, right? And at the same time, if some worse drivers, so most of the drivers on the roads are worse than them, you can't do anything about it, right? And if everybody's like if we increase the baseline using autonomous driving, which is that all cars are better being driven, then of course things will improve for even the best driver as well. So I don't see in the any negative outcome uh, for going all autonomous.
Okay. And my next question is related to that because recently, with AI being the theme of every other conversation, people have been really, concerned about job displacement. So when it comes to autonomous vehicles, many people who, earn by driving and these sort of professions, they would be concerned as well that job displacement would be affected by autonomous vehicles. So what would you like to say about that?
So job displacement is a thing, and it's currently happening, right? It's not just with or without AI. It's simply something that happens with automation, right? If we even cut the AI out of the picture, it's still gonna happen. And the reason for that is that so I mean, like, here's how the entire thing works. For any business, they have to optimize their profit. They have to increase in order to grow, right? Because if you're not doing that, then somebody else is going to come and displace you, right? So it's not just job displacement, it's about business displacement as well, which means that they have to take active measure. Now, even if you cut AI out of the pictures for a business, let's say that has grocery stores and they have to move, let's say, huge amount of groceries every single day, they will try to increase space in their trailers so they can put more grocery. They are going to try to find ways to pack more. Um, they will try to add more cars to or more space to whatever they're currently doing. They will try to hire cheaper drivers, and all that is, it's not something that you can do anything about whether AI comes into the picture or not. That
Yes.
that's not now. Um, I think for for quite a while, and this conversation again, I've seen that happen back in 2000 and. Um, 15 for 2014 2015 when the hype started, right? And we're almost like 10 years down and nothing has happened, right? There no job displacement. Even there are more people who are driving for third party kind of like these rental apps, right? So this has actually increased. The jobs have increased. It hasn't decreased.
Yes.
I think, but I would say that even if AI, so autonomous vehicles are not a product yet, and we're hearing hype about them for more than again a decade, and some people have predicted, oh, if by 2000, 2020, there won't be any human driver, and of course it didn't happen. And they were like, oh, by 2022 there won't be any human driver, and it had happened. Then 2024, and so on and on. So this is always a prediction, and they have to make that prediction in order to get the investor interest. But um, from a realistic point of view, I would say that even if 100% autonomous vehicle that haven't happened were to happen today,
Yes.
no job will be displaced. And the reason for that is that until we have done significant amount of infrastructure upgrade, autonomous vehicle, even if they can drive perfectly, would not be suitable, right? So because think about it this way, right? Even if um, for your delivery people, right? Even if the car is driving itself, they still have to get out of the car. They still have to take out the food or whatever they're delivering. They still have to go and put it on. So that's not something that instantly is going to get displaced, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, a part of it does get, but it's not 100%. And again, autonomous vehicle is a topic, right? It's a research topic. We're constantly working on it. It's being done by quite a lot of people, including ourselves. But it will still take, I would say, anywhere from 15 to 20 years before we see a car that can perfectly drive itself on the roads of Bombay or Lahore or anywhere where realistic, chaotic traffic um, runs, right? So as good as being a human. Yes, if you go to Phoenix or if you go to some, perfectly planned suburban where there are two or three vehicles and everybody drives very nicely. Yes, they work, but that's like not really the rest of the world, right? So
Yeah.
which basically means that it's good as a demo, but it's not really is displacing any jobs anytime soon, right? So um, and by then we don't know what other changes are going to take place again, right? An example I always give, like a century and a half ago, the biggest profession for women was sewing, right? Literally sat and they had a that way the entire term sewing sweatshops come from, where you had these huge halls where a lot of women were sitting and sewing clothes, and that's how people got to wear what they got to wear. And 1.5 century later, it's not no longer a job. Has the job availability or the earning power of women have grown less? No, I would say that it has actually grown probably 10 to 20 fold higher than it used to be, right? They're in position of power. They are also,
Yes.
I think, once we displace or get rid of those basic menial jobs, there'll be better jobs for people to do. There'll be better quality of life for everyone. So I don't think there is anything to worry about.
Okay. And another concern that most people might have would be that would these autonomous vehicles would be hacked? What would be the risk in that? Because today you have difficulty harming somebody, but you can just hack into their system and maybe, crash their car or something like that. What would you say about that?
Um, so there is a difference between a consumer device that you use for everyday browsing and what we call redundant systems, right? So vehicles or any such things that can cause physical harm, they run a very different hardware and they have a very different safety procedure, right?
Okay.
Not to say that they can't be hacked, not to say that they're impossible to do, but it would take a very persistent and very heavy-handed effort to do so, right? So your script kiddie from his basement is not going to be able to do anything with such a device, right? However, if a government is keen on crashing your car and they have, let's say, 1,000 people sitting and figuring out how to do it, they will be eventually able to do it. But again, like such a government that wants to cause you physical harm can always send something else like a drone your way, right? It doesn't need to specifically hack your vehicle. So that concern is actually, I think, in most cases moot, because redundant systems are not. It's not easy. It's a lot easier to do something else, right? So
Yes.
for a sci-fi movie or like something a political thriller maybe, but not in the real world. No.
Okay. And who would bear responsibility when it comes to accidents of autonomous vehicles? Would it be the owner? Would it be the person who created it? Or would it be the company as well?
That's a great question, and that's a conversation that needs to happen, right? Because currently there's a huge industry around accidents, right? And there shouldn't be, but there is, which is insurance companies and replacement parts and a second-hand salvage market and a whole bunch of these things. Now, that is something that needs to be thought about and figured out. How does this market uh, rework itself when vehicles are being driven? I mean, one of the conversations that people have is that you no longer own a vehicle, rather you will get whatever vehicle is available, and that will be owned by a corporation. I think a lot of people will have concerns about that, especially what they've seen with in the last 3 4 years, um, that they don't want their property to be owned by anybody, or the data to be passing through anybody's cloud. So that is something that needs to be figured out. um, One another thing is that in most cases when this is happening, there is a partial ownership of algorithms that is
Okay.
by the corporation, not the property itself, like the car itself, but the algorithm. So if the accident happens, then there needs to be an investigation, and if the algorithm is at fault, because what we can envision even now is that that's going to be an algorithm market, right? So while you're not going to have a human driver, you are going to have an algorithm driver, and there may be multiple algorithms that are in competition to create the best, better, and better driver, not a single algorithm that is running everything. And if that's the case, then often it's going to come down to, okay, figure out which algorithm messed up and have some kind of way to pay the damage costs without hampering the ability to improve the algorithm. And that can be probably an insurance company, or it can be the investors. I don't know exactly, but um, I think it's going to come down to something similar to that if we go that route, where um, the company that is building the algorithms want to keep the ownership of the algorithm even when it's in a private vehicle.
Okay. And before we wrap up, Adnan, do you have any key takeaways that you would like to share with us for today's episode?
I think yeah, if you're a driver and if you're doing delivery or something, you're doing, your job is not in danger, right? It's a conversation that keeps on happening, and but for now you're pretty safe, right? So um, don't no need to fret. For now, at least the things that are coming, or the intermediary, like transitional stage, it's just becoming easier to drive in most cases, right? When I started driving, I had a manual car, and where you change gear by hand, so you need to actually know which speed you're going on in order to. And these days it's not as common as it used to be. But of course, you have to look in the back view mirror, you have to look in the side mirror, you have to manually turn and look at things, and now you have cameras and everything, right? So I don't know. I think
Yeah.
things are getting much easier for driver these days, uh, and they're gonna continue to get easier, right? So if you're a driver, your life is actually improving; it's not getting worse, right?
Yeah.
And the job displacement that happens, you'll see it coming from very, very far away, right? And it's not anywhere um, close yet. So yeah, just enjoy the technology. Just you know. I think you're in safe hands.
Okay, that's great. And as today's episode comes to an end, I would really like to thank Adnan for giving us insights about this amazing topic. And we would also like to announce that we are looking for a creator for our podcast, and anybody who is interested in joining, they can just email on our socials and DM us on our socials as well. And we would have love to have a creator round where we would do a Q&A as well. And have an amazing weekend, everybody. Don't forget to check out the Opus website. Our pre-sale is live, and make sure that you guys stay happy and healthy. So bye bye.
All right, bye bye. Have a great week and
Thank you.
weekend.